I'm gonna just do slow-mo through the whole thing. So
Okay,
that you're
good.
just
Yes, good. And if somebody else remembers something, that would be great too. If they could, you know, get it going by reminding me of something.
yeah.
That
Well,
would
I
be helpful
remember driving with you to Sacramento. Remember that morning that we drove? It was like you picked me up at the BART station in El Cerrito. And we drove to Sacramento for that horrible Dogger hearing. And we got to listen to Jason. Our reward for getting up that early and driving to Sacramento was to listen to Jason Marshall prevaricate for 3 hours. Yeah, that was
really don't remember it. See, I've totally blacked it out.
I think if you're going to lose memories,
Yes,
losing memories
yes.
of Jason Marshall
that may
is
be
a
actually a
great place to
purposeful
start.
one that I've forgotten about, but yeah.
What So we're just basically going to talk about organizing,
Okay.
and I guess where I want to start is, why are you an organizer?
Well, yeah, because I really didn't like practicing law, and you know, I did that for. That's kind of a joke, but anyway, it's partially a joke and partially not. But I think I guess I think to make real change, like make fundamental change that actually, you know, impacts the world we live in. I think organizing has to be a part of it. I think obviously there are a lot of other tools we use, and I think all of those are really important. But I think fundamentally organizing has to be part of the recipe that gets us to the real fundamental change that we talk about here at the center, that we talk about in the climate program, and particularly dealing with an issue like climate. You're not going to get the kind of action we need on climate without organizing being a key component of what we do. And I think that's what we knew, you know, a long time ago, relative to I think other organizations that do legal work. When we started to bring in an organizing component to the climate work that we've been doing, Cassie's been doing, and others have been doing for a long time, that was having a big impact, but was I think vulnerable without the organizing piece. I think all of our legal work is really vulnerable without an organizing piece that backs it up, that gets that kind of fundamental change on the ground and what people are thinking and feeling, and yeah, so I think it's to both make that change and keep it protected.
Earlier we were talking about the fact that you were active in the anti-apartheid movement in college.
Mm-hmm.
What was that like? What did you do?
Mm-hmm. You know, basically made a lot of trouble. I think it was just much more grassroots making trouble for the university. You know, everything from sleeping out in front of the university hall, disrupting the day-to-day operations there, stopping them from taking place until they divested from their holdings in apartheid South Africa. You know, we did our, you know, those were back in the days of, you don't even probably know what a mimeograph machine is, do you?
No,
I
don't.
So, well, that's dating myself there, but you know, using a mimeograph machine or whatever we used back then to make copies, and we didn't have cell phones. You know, we had phone trees, so I would call you and Ash, and then Ash would call you and you and you, and that's how the way we communicated something was happening, you know, urgently. We didn't have cell phones, we didn't have emails. I think about that now, and I just feel like, wow, those would have been good days for me now, because I can't use any of that stuff. But anyway, that's not the way it is anymore. But yeah, so I did a lot of grassroots organizing, mainly with student work, you know, trying to get the university to divest from their holdings, substantial holdings from apartheid South Africa, and you know, grassroots disruption of what was happening there at the university until they did that, which they finally did after a long, long time. And I think more the movement than that actual victory played a role in creating the circumstances that led to the fall of apartheid. lot of other changes, but
What was the key to getting other students involved in that movement? Like, what would you say or do to bring people on board?
I think a lot of it was building community, of just getting your friends and acquaintances and people you knew to make them aware of what really was a argument around justice. It wasn't. I think that was the key messaging, which was the key. Really wasn't even around messaging. It was what it was about. It was about justice. And I think equality and those kinds of basic fundamental things that people believe in. So I feel like when we're talking about clean air, that's everything. Everybody believes in that. Of course you want clean air. Of course you want justice. Of course you want equality. You wouldn't be against those things. I think framing things like those fundamental core beliefs that we all share or should share, and I think people do. They don't see things sometimes in those lenses, which really aren't that deep. But I think getting back to those fundamental themes, more and more so, is the way to move people, rather than getting into too much of the detail of. Sometimes we get lost in.
Yeah. When you think back to that movement, is there anything that environmentalists could learn from it?
I think one thing I think about, and this also I think reflects just youth. I was a lot younger. Was risk taking. I think sometimes we're not necessarily at the center, but a lot of environmental groups are just too cautious. Cautious about what we ask for, what we dream about, the movements and the actions we take to get those things. And I feel like that cautiousness, just makes this really easy, sinkhole for the movement to fall into. And if we're not going to ask for it, if we're not going to demand it, then it's just too easy for that to be, where we end up. And for the movement not to get what we really need. So we all know what we need, which is, an end to the fossil fuel world. And, if we can't say that and demand that and really push for what gets us there along the way, then if we're not demanding that, we're just never going to be able to get there. So I think as we go along, the more we can take that tough stand and really, also bring along others. So I'm not saying that we should, we need to build that movement to get others to be with us. We're not going to get that alone. So it's somewhere in there that we need to be, I think, in order to really win in the end, win for all of us, win for our climate and win for our planet and people, and our animals and plants.
So what, Rose Braz, is an example of a time that you have seen organizing really work, really get what it's after?
Well, I think we're witnessing something right now with the Dakota Access Pipeline fight. I know we haven't won that fight yet, but I think what has happened so far, and at least this victory of what seems like a big statement against the fight, against the Dakota Access Pipeline coming from the administration, big step, is a result of years and years of organizing by Native American leaders, for sure, and other communities across the country, fighting pipelines and fighting oil and gas, fighting for Native American rights. But it is amazing that, that the Obama administration felt compelled to make a strong statement against that pipeline. So I think that is a tremendous victory. Obviously, there's a long way to go on that fight, but that happened so quickly. In my view, obviously, the fight's been going on a long time, but quickly in the eyes of public, I think, is a really big statement to organizing that's been going on for years.
Any sense of what the secret of their success is? Like, why is what they're doing working?
I mean, I think it is a testament to years and years of organizing around pipeline struggles, around oil and gas, obviously around Native American rights. It's a big testament to that all that organizing. I would say, and oil and gas organizing. I think those things is coming to fruition and coming to the point where, hopefully we get where, they're not going to be able to build these pipelines. They're not going to be able to continue on pumping up freely the way they have been.
Yeah. All right, let's go back in time to the very first organizing event.
Oh my God.
The very first action you were involved in. Tell us about that.
Do I really have to tell this story? I don't think this bodes well because this makes me look like a professional organizer. But I will tell the story for Cassie Siegel's sake. But I do not want it aired publicly on any YouTube channels.
I promise.
Okay, I went to Catholic school, and so these nuns did not like the fact that a porno movie theater had opened up in beautiful Concord, California, downtown Concord, California. And they gathered up a bunch of us kids. I don't remember how old I was. I was old enough to know what was going on, to protest the porno movie theater that had opened up. And for some reason, I thought this was really a lot of fun. So I joined them and created a paper little pathway from the movie theater that the patrons of the porno movie theater had to walk on with the painted on it, pathway to hell this way. And so the poor patrons had to walk on the pathway to hell to get to the porno movie theater, which I did see one of my classmates' father going into the porno movie theater. And today, that porno movie theater is a evangelical church. So, victory. Ever since then, I knew that organizing worked.
What I love about this story is that it just somehow encapsulates your incredible natural talent for organizing and for going for the jugular to get success. Right to the heart of things and the most effective message and tactics.
You have to be bold.
So earlier we were talking about mimeograph, remember? And it put me in mind of a question I wanted to ask, which is, we have all of these high-tech tools available to us, social media, easily portable camera phones, all these things that push organizing online. And obviously those in some ways have been very helpful, but I'm wondering if you think that they may have cost us something too. Is there a downside to the incredible reliance on online tools for organizing?
Yeah, I mean, I think that in some ways it helps communication, and in some ways it actually harms communication. I mean, if you get as many emails as I used to get, since I cut myself off a lot of email chains, you can't absorb that amount of information. We used to have phone trees, right? So you get the alert that Jerry Brown's going to be at the corner, doing something, right? I call 3 people, you call 3 people, it's just, that's the way it worked. And now that just doesn't seem to happen nearly as much. And it's all email, and it's all too much email, and I couldn't keep up with it before. I had all this disability with the email, and now I certainly can't keep up with it. And I do think it's like, I think about, we come into the office, and what do? We just sit down in front of the computer and we look at that email and we read it and read it and read it, and then we do get on the phone and we talk to people, and we do a lot of conference calls, but we really spend a lot of time looking at the email. So in some ways, I think it facilitates communication, and in some ways, it really harms communication. And I particularly feel that since I can't look at the email so much, and I'm required to call people more, and it's like, it does make it a difference. And I think yeah, I mean, this is kind of like nothing new. I think a lot of people have observed this. It's like this divide, it really is. There's these benefits, and then there's these big blocks to actual real communication with people. So, but it's not going back. So it's kind of what it is. And I think to break through that, I'm not really sure how you do that. I mean, I do wonder, like, you see the people at the pipeline demo, like all those people there, how are they communicating? What are their communication methods there? I mean, I don't know what they're using, It's interesting to hear what's going on there.
Is there an antidote? Do you have something, what should people do to fight that tendency to sort of dehumanize organizing, to take it all online?
I think the one antidote I would have is like just, people spending more time together, and take more time together outside of like a meeting or outside of a email for sure, so if it's a phone call, and I know that's really hard, but even a phone call or even a, whatever, something else, and I know it's really hard for people. Our lives are not made up for that, for sure.
Yeah.
And they're getting worse. I think it's getting worse. So.
Yeah. What other advice do you have for contemporary organizers? What should they be doing? What are some good things that you've seen work?
I mean, I think one of the hardest things is to be bold. People want to agree with each other, and you do want to agree with each other. So I think that line between, being friendly and and you want to be part of the team and part of your movement, and yet you're kind of a little bit out there because you take a different position, or you're a little bit bolder, your stance is a little bit stronger. So you want to, it's easy to agree. It's harder to, be a little bit more out there. And so I think trying to build those relationships so that when you can be a little bit bolder with people who are your friends and allies, who know you, who have respect for you. So doing that kind of work, showing up at things, that maybe aren't on highest of your priority list, I think that means a lot. I think sometimes we don't take the time to do that. I know we go around to a lot of different events, and sometimes we're they're small events, but we're there. I think that's really important. It's harder and harder to do that, but I think being respectful of other people's events and showing that solidarity actually means a lot.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
these types of things.
Yeah, that's great.
Co-sponsoring things. I know, like, a lot of people have a lot of trepidation about putting their names on different things, and I understand that, and my inclination is like, well, is there anything too bad on there? Let's go ahead and put our name on there. It's like, because it means a lot to people, particularly some of the smaller groups, some of the groups working on different issues that maybe aren't our issue per se. It means a lot to them to have our name on it because we're a little bigger, or we're maybe a different issue. It means a lot to them to have our name on it. So I think if we can, it's really important that we do that. Obviously, if there's something we can't sign on to, we can't. But I think the more we can do that kind of support work, it really means a lot to a lot of the smaller groups. So that's the way I think we can stand out from some of the other groups.
I'm going to make a confession now.
Uh-oh.
Before I came to the center, I had never, and this is so weird and hilarious, but I had never seen a job title of organizer. I mean, in retrospect, I've worked with people who were organizers, but I'd never, and so it forced me to think about organizing as, I don't know, a trade or a calling in a way that I really hadn't before. And so I think there are a lot of people in my same boat. If you were going to just express the essence of organizing, like what is organizing? What is it?
I guess I would say, I think of it as bringing people together to provide the tools and connections to make the kind of social change you're working to achieve. I guess I would say that. So it could be anything from, here's, help making this poster, we need help making this poster, or it could be, let's go let's devise this piece of legislation together, how do we get this change, or, it could be a small thing or a big thing, I guess. And all that goes into that. So I'm obviously those are the end products, but all of that goes into that could be a lot of different things.
Yeah, so it's like this this incredibly wide spectrum from these micro tasks to this kind of massive strategic planning that goes on, and
it could take a little while, or it can take the rest of your life to achieve whatever that change is, right?
Yeah. What do people not get about it? Like, what is the biggest misconception that they have?
Yeah.
Sorry.
I was gonna say, sometimes I think people think that, I guess I might have said at a certain point in my life that I think people think it's easier than doing something else. That might be easier than being a doctor or something else. I don't know, whatever. Like something that sounds more, you have to have a particular degree to do this or whatever. I don't know, but I think a lot of people do understand how hard it is too. So I don't know. Some people may think it's easier because it's more nebulous. It's not. Not a rote A, B, C, do these three things, and but I think anybody who has experience doing organizing, trying to get some kind of social change, knows it's not easy. So
I think some people might imagine that it's like it's just talking to people.
Yeah,
you just spend a lot of time talking to people, but it is more than that.
It's a lot of that, and it's a lot more than that. Yeah.
This is going to be one of those but what made you an organizer? Like, why? Why are you an organizer?
Well, I practiced law for a while, and I did get really frustrated with how much change you could get through only practicing law. So I definitely think law is a very important tool, that we have, and we should use it. And at the same time, I didn't feel like, for me, that was the tool. I got tired of using that tool. I felt it was insufficient for the kind of change. I was always an organizer too, so I just, see a toolbox, and there are many tools in the toolbox, and there's organizing, and there's law, and there's media, and there's other things, art, and I just felt like I kind of burned out on using the legal tool, and wanted to use the organizing tool more. So, and I really like, what we do here at the center is try to use all of those different tools, because I don't think there's one tool that's going to, get us real social change. So I don't think that just organizing alone is going to do it. I don't think that, obviously, just a legal case, we're going to, win the revolution with a legal case, or either, so.
Was there a particular case that you worked on that was kind of the breaking point, the straw that broke the back?
Well, I did have, it's funny because there's this one case there was a client we had, Euro Wills, who was one of my first clients. This was one of my first criminal defense cases I had. I wasn't the lead attorney, but I was assisting this attorney who was long practicing criminal defense attorney, a very, very good, well-known criminal defense attorney in federal court. And I had this young guy who got caught up in this crazy robbery case, and he was accused of basically thinking he was watching too many of those crazy movies, where you go in and commit this robbery. Like, they had drilled a hole in the top of this bank and parachuted in before it opened, and taken, robbed the bank of some monies. I don't even remember how much it was. It wasn't even that much. And then they had escaped out, like gotten out with this, and then they had thrown these Molotov cocktails to divert the police when they came, and they had escaped. And because they had thrown the Molotov cocktails, they got this enhancement. Under federal law, you get this mandatory 30-year enhancement. They hadn't hurt anybody, but took it to trial. He insisted he didn't do it. And so I took it to trial, and I thought we did this really bang-up job. We did this really great job. And the only real evidence they had that it was him was there was a Adidas tennis shoe print. And, it was like this really common shoe, and sure enough, we thought there was this baloney kid. I thought we did a really good job, and they convicted him. And he got a 30-year mandatory enhancement on the sentence because of throwing the Molotov cocktail. It was under those mandatory minimum laws. So this kid, who was a kid, I think he's still in prison. He had liver problems, everything like that. Anyway, I forgot what your question was. What was your question? But
Well, it sounds like that was a case that really discouraged you.
Yes, that case. But that was actually towards the beginning of my career, because I just assisted this guy who was a really good criminal defense attorney, and it was ridiculous that they convicted him on this tennis shoe. That's what I was gonna say. The tennis shoe, we had evidence that there were like 1 billion of these tennis shoes created, and a lot in his size, and it was just ridiculous. But they convicted him, and he went away. He could still be in there. Definitely, I think he still is in there. So anyway,
Showed you the limits of what being
yes,
aware
it was
could
very
really
depressing.
achieve.
It was very depressing.
What you were a lawyer then for several years.
I was, at least for 10 years. I think for 10 years I did criminal defense work,
When you do something for that long and then you decide to do something else, it can be pretty scary, I guess. How did you feel when you said, no, I'm going to do something else?
Well, I did it really gradually. So I was in private practice. I was working for another criminal defense attorney, and I also was doing a lot of activism work too, and I was doing a lot of anti-prison work, and I was volunteering with Critical Resistance. Well, we hadn't formed Critical Resistance. We organized this conference called Critical Resistance, talking about ending the prison industrial complex, ending the use of prisons as a form of punishment. And so we did this conference. It turned out to be bigger than we thought it was going to be, and more impactful. And then people wanted to form an organization, and then we're like, well, someone has to, do this work. And I was like, oh, well, okay, I don't know. And so then I started to kind of do the work to help form the organization, and I was doing that part-time, and then I was still doing the criminal defense work because we didn't really have money to form the organization. So I didn't want to give up my paid work. and then gradually we got some money to. George Soros gave us some money, and then I could quit my job. And that's what happened.
And
then
so
I
when you
that
did
for
that,
10 years.
and you worked against prisons for 10 years.
Yes. Pretty much.
Wow. So, what was that?
Hello. Hi there. Oh, hello. Are you all on a conference call or something?
No,
Yeah, I only have about 50 more questions.
you're so amazing, baby.
No, just
You're so
old.
amazing.
Well, Brendan reminded me you were at Seattle for the WTO protest.
I was there, but I didn't do any of the organizing. But I was there. He was there too. Yeah, you can ask him about that.
How was his turtle costume?
I have a picture of that. We can bring it from the house. Yes. He looks very young. That turtle costume. Because he had all his hair.
Oh, he used to have long hair.
Yes.
Oh, okay, that's right.
We have to bring that in.
Well, okay. Question.
Will you talk a little bit about how you think that people working on different aspects of the interrelated problems we face in the world can do a better job working together? How can the people working to fight the prison industrial complex?
Well, I will
Work
say
on
this, that, so back in the day when I was doing that prison work, and we filed the lawsuit against the Delano prison under the Environmental State and California Environmental Quality Act, or whatever, was that what we filed under CEQA? Yeah. That and the organizing and campaign that went with that has stopped all prison construction. They've built all these little additional beds added to the smaller prisons. They haven't stopped adding people. Well, they have addition of prison beds has stopped. But let me tell you, that litigation and that campaign that went with the litigation, only because the center and Cassie, because we asked Cassie to do it, has stopped the additions of those new mega prisons in California. And that's an organizing, and anyone will tell you that. And that only happened because you guys were willing to do that, because we asked you to do that, and because we already did all the organizing with it. And otherwise there'd be a bunch of big, massive California prisons, and that's the truth, And that was a big, big deal, big deal. So, and that only happened because of the personal relationships and the willingness of the center and the groups to, take a chance and do it.
It seems like we spend so much of our time and psychic energy on communication and those personal relationships. And sometimes it's really tough. And you're probably the best person in the entire world at communication and bringing people together. And how do you approach it? And what do you think are the things that are important for people to do in order to have that stuff go better?
Well, I would definitely not say I'm probably the best person to do that, but I would say, I think it's just really important to do whatever you can for the other person, to kind of, the other group, that's why I'm always like, can't we please sign on to this? Can't we please do whatever? Can't we go to this? Can't we, and I know it's not always easy to do, and I'm not saying we should sign anything or we should do everything, but I feel like anything we can do to build that reciprocal relationship is really important, because we're always asking for stuff in return. So
In a nutshell, how would you say people should approach sign-on letters?
sign them. I don't think that means not asking for changes if we can at the beginning, but my attitude is always, if we can sign it, sign it. If we can't sign it, if there's some small change we can ask for, we should. Obviously, if it's something antithetical, I'm not saying don't sign anything, but think all that stuff is important. It means a lot to groups, you know, so. And the other thing I would say was get in there early with any changes, because then it's a big mess if you don't.
Can I ask, how do you deal with two different types of people or people with stances? So the people who should be on our side but aren't, and the people who are definitely not on our side.
For the people definitely not on our side, my kind of attitude is like, if they're really never going to be on our side, I don't think it's worth our time. I guess I hate to say that. Maybe I'm wrong about that. For the other people that should be on our side, it seems like maybe they're worse. They are in some ways worse. I don't know. Maybe I'm going to take my initial thing back and say we should focus on the other people. I don't know, because I do think that do you feel like you've seen some of those people though that should be on our side move?
A little bit once pushed really hard.
I think so.
Yeah.
I think so. I think some of them have moved. I do. And I think one thing is getting in there early. I think where we suffer sometimes is because we're smaller. We get in there late, and then it's really hard to move them once they've already and I know it's really hard for us to be everywhere all the time, and they have so much more people, you know, and like I'm thinking of the club, you know, I mean, I just feel like once the club can be everywhere all the time, you know, and it just makes it really harder. One concrete thing is I think we have to really try to be more places. We can do it better now that we're a little bigger, but I feel like when it was just like, you know, us, it's so hard to be in all those places, and so it can be easier if we're there earlier. So that's one concrete thing I would say, is just for us to try to identify earlier where we do need to be, so we can intervene earlier in the key things we think that are important. And that would be another thing, is maybe to kind of to pare down what the key things are, so because we can't be everywhere. It's so hard for us to be everywhere all the time. Maybe we have to. That was kind of a mealy, rambling answer, but
A lot of people are very with conflict and with taking the hard stances and pursuing the going for the jugular strategies. Maybe bird dogging isn't the great example, but maybe it's a good example, that actually move decision makers. And what would you say to those people in terms of why we need to be willing to take, to use strategies sometimes that are quite confrontational in order to actually win?
Well, I mean, I feel like, look at the Dakota Access Pipeline stuff, you know, I mean, I feel like that's not people are not being super nice, you know, it's not a friendly strategy, right? It's like gotten beyond that. I mean, you know, I think that you could be nice. You can try that first, but if that's not going to work, you know, it becomes pretty apparent it's not going to work, and you don't want to go from 0 to 100 in 5 seconds, but you know,
Like top 5 tips for running a good meeting.
Don't invite. No. Oh, is that on tape? Oh God.
It'll be edited out.
No, that is a good question. That is a very good question. mean, yeah, some of them are just basic. Have an agenda. You know, I mean, people don't do some of the very basic things. You know, like have an agenda. You know, have a good facilitator. You know. I'm really being honest, which is just like, you know, make sure that no one's dominating in the facilitation. Make sure that no one person is just dominating. I think another thing is making sure that the points you want to achieve are accomplished and concluded in the meeting. I've been to so many meetings where people just talk and there's no conclusion. There's just like people are, well, what was the resolution of that? And nobody knows, you know, come out of that. So,